Well, hello there. So today we will be making something really beautiful. Of course. Why else would you be here? Because you love to see things that are beautiful. So let's get started. I'm going to show you something really quick and simple. If you want to make it into a bigger quilt, you can. If you want to slim it down a bit, you can also. How are you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to make something really fantastic and sweet. So let's get started, and I'm going to show you how to make this so quick. You're going to be like, well, why didn't I think about this before? It's so easy. I know. That's what I'm here for. I got you. I got you guys. Let's get started. Alright, so you'll be needing some squares. However random and scrappy they are, the better, because you need some scrappy ones for this. It doesn't matter what size the squares is. You can make it into whatever you want. But I've got a pile here. I'm not sure if I'm going to use all of them, but I'm going to give you the idea. And then you can create however large of a quilt or a table runner or a baby quilt that you want to. You also need some background squares, and I'll be using white. So let's get to this, guys. Let's get to it. Alright, so with your squares, you're going to be using the smaller ones. We need to turn 4 of these squares into some flying geese. So all we need to do is take your smaller squares and sew them onto 4 of the squares. So 2 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 there. It doesn't really matter where you put the colors, but as long as you choose 4 squares. Alright, so let's separate them. You can make as many as you want. Now how large you want your quilt, it's down to you. It doesn't really matter, guys. This is your project. Make it fun and exciting. Once you've sewn all of your squares on for the first one, you just simply need to line it up, cut it off, and this now becomes scrap. Do the same for this one as well. Doesn't matter what size you cut it off to, it's up to you, but that's scraps. You can keep it if you wish. What you're going to do now is fold it back, finger press. Don't iron this yet. Put your white to the back of the dark fabric and fold it back as well. Once you've done that, you get your other square and place it on there, sew it on, cut, and do the same. Let's do that now. So I like to chain piece as it goes a lot more faster and quicker. So once you've decided on your 4, you can just simply do that. Just chain piece it all. You'll do the same thing, fold it all back, cut it all off, and then the magic happens. So let's trim this one. I'm going to separate that chain because I don't need it to be connected anymore. I'm going to put that to the side, trim this one off. Now you can iron these, however, don't put a steaming hot iron on it because it will stretch it as these cuts are biased. Excuse me, as these cuts are biased. So remember, you can just put a warm iron, fold it over like so, and I'm just finger pressing, or you can take your seam press and do that, whatever is the easiest. But most important, do not steam press it, otherwise it's going to shrink up because the fabric here is on the bias, as I said. All right, and let me show you how to lay the blocks out. So I use a stitch and flip method to complete these items here, these squares. Okay, so you can choose a background square or you can choose an ordinary square. I have all of my squares laid out here in the orientation that I want. So I'm going to take the squares that I did the stitch and flip method and lay them like so. And just get that all nice and centered. Remember, you can use any size square, so it's not really important as to what size squares I can. This is also perfect to use up some scraps. I'm going to do this one as well. All you've got to remember is just to use the same size for the square. There is no trickery with this here. I'm not trying to trick you in any way, shape or form. Just so simple. All right, now you can see here, I'm glad I demonstrated this so I remember. So you can see here I use my iron a little bit too long. You can see how the edges has warped there. Okay, now to correct that, you can just simply line it up and trim it down, but I'm going to leave it as it's just a demonstration so that you guys get the idea. But that was just done so that you can see what not to do, because then you see the result. I think sometimes people don't understand what will happen. So you can see how the fabric is warped there in comparison to this one. It's nice and straight. Okay, so if you want, you can put an ordinary square back in the middle there to show off your star legs, and that's a really easy way of making some beautiful stars in your quilt using a 9 patch. However, if you wanted that star to pop a little bit more, I would use the same color as the background legs, your star legs, just to ensure that those stars really pop. And there's no need to trim or anything like that, because the square has come back to the same size, isn't it? So that's why I say to you, it doesn't matter what size your squares are, but that looks really good. So what you can do now is just sew it together as a 9 patch, and you Okay, so I've laid it all out. I'm just looking at it now just to ensure that I'm happy with where I think the stars are. What I have done is laid it out in stars, 9 patch, stars, 9 patch, and then I continued with star, 9 patch, star, 9 patch. All right, all the way through. I think a bit bigger quilt would be ideal for this. It will show up the pattern a lot more better. Well, nothing's wrong with it as it is, in all honesty. I just think it's a quilt that you can make a very beautiful big quilt. I actually see this as a Christmas pattern, which I think will work really nicely, showing off the stars and using white background, but on Christmas squares. I think it will just pop really nicely. I think I'll try this for Christmas. But I love the pattern. Really nice, simple, quick quilt. I'm going to add some borders, definitely, but I'm considering whether or not I separate it with a cornerstone and sashing, which of course will enlarge the whole quilt. But I am liking the no sashing also. When the blocks come together, you get a 4-patch in the corner of the block, so that is nice. Okay, and it's kind of seamless. I think I'll turn it into a quilt as you go. I think it's beautiful as it is, to be honest. I love it. Love the colors. It's just so vibrant, very summery, very spring, just warm, welcoming colors that it's inviting. Will look really nice as a throw or definitely as a full bed quilt. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, so I'm going to add some borders, but not yet. I am going to turn it into a quilt as you go. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that, and then we'll move on to the next stage. All right, before I start to sew, I just thought I'll change stuff around and see what it looks like. To be honest, I am kind of feeling this pattern. So what I've done is use the stars to make a cross in the middle. I mean, before it was alternating. You can also lay it out very random, so you can put the stars anywhere. In fact, I'll do a random layout before we stitch together, so that you can make a lot of changes. I do find that I do have a lot of pinks in one area. There's another pink there as well, so I'm going to swap the stars around because I want all of the colors to be dotted around evenly. So yeah, so I'm going to change it around into a little bit more random and see what it looks like, because before it was sort of alternating, isn't it? So I'm just going to throw the stars anywhere and see what it looks like. All right, so I've randomly placed them on this particular layout here. As you can see, there's like 4 in a corner there, there's 2 there, and there's 2 here. And obviously the stars make the layout here, but I think either layout is fine. Whatever you choose, it's it's up. You can play around. You can put, it's 8 stars in total, so you can put all stars there in the middle, lengthways, crossways. You can make a cross with it. I mean, there's lots of different variations. You can use the stars to enhance the quilt, but ideally, I think anyway the stars drop on the quilter, I think it will still look beautiful. For me, what really makes this is the colors of the prints, the fabric, etc. I think the whole thing goes together really nicely. So for me, that's really moves it. But I'm going to choose a layout, probably the first one, and then we're going to take it from there. Okay, so for an update, I've sewn all of the rows together. So row 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the quilt as you go is going to be compiled in rows. However, I've made some changes. I've added on an inner row here with some cornerstones. So I'm going to glue base the first row onto the batting, so the quilt as you go is going to be compiled in rows, and then I will do the same. So then I will add these 2 together, glue base onto the batting, and so on and so forth. All right, so once that's done, then we will compile it as we would normally. So most likely your front is going to be on, not the backing. Again, front on, not the backing. So I'm just going to simply glue base, as I said, quilt, and then add the batting on. But again, I will show you how that is done. All right, so I'm going to get ready and then I'll switch the camera back on. All right, so next step, I have added on a border to the side. So this is still just half of the quilt top. So I've sewn 2 rows together. All right, so I've added a top border and a side border. The other half is on the table. So I've folded the quilt top in half and the batting is folded in half also. So I'm going to glue base it on, and then I am going to quilt it, and then we will join both together, and I'll show you how to do the joining. All right, so we're going to open it flat, baste, quilt, then join. Okay, so what you saw me just did is half, I glue base half of the quilt. When you saw me lifted it up just now, there was a red thread underneath and it was literally on the white area, so I didn't want that there. So I just wanted to move it. That's one thing I love about the glue base, is that, you know, you can just lift it up and stick it back down again, which is no issues. So what I'm going to do is to just add a little bit of an iron to further adhere it to it. I don't want it on red. It's not on just yet. It's starting to warm up. As soon as you touch it, it stops blinking and starts to warm up. So I'm going to change it just to like, just a mellow, so it's ready now. Just a mellow heat. I don't want it too hot. And just press it down. That's it, so it further sticks to it. I do like when I do that, it does smoothen it a lot more as well, much more than my hands will do. And then I will just simply do the other half. You notice there's just half of the quilt I'm reaching. Sorry for shaking the camera. Okay, so I'm going to put that down. And just do the other side. So I'm just going to fold it over. And I would know when to stop pulling because I can feel it that it's already stuck there. So I just saw another piece of red thread. So if you see thread on the batting, just move it. That's why it's really better to use like a really light color thread or yellow, you know, something light. Don't use a deep color. And this is leftover batting. The roll just literally finished, so I think it had some left over. And I like to spray the batting. I think it's better because when you spray the quilt top, then you can see deposits of the glue. So for me, the batting is better. And all I'm going to do is just lift it over. I'm going to turn it around so that you can see, because if I'll have to move the camera. That's too much effort. Right, I'm just going to do the same thing. So what you saw me doing, if it's the first time seeing me do this, is to literally, because it's not down, as long as I haven't pulled it down, spread it down is what I mean, it's not adhere to it there. So I like to smoothen it out. I like to bring any air pockets towards me. And just use my hands and flap it out. I do feel it gets a lot more smoother like that. And I can see I need a little bit of glue on this side. And remember, if you feel like it's when it sticks down, it's a little bit rough, you can always lift it up, put it back down, use the heat, because the heat from the iron will melt the glue and it will re-stick again. Okay, so I'm just smoothing that off, and I have literally cut the batting to the size of the quilt top. So this is half of the quilt top, so we're doing it in 2 rows. So to repeat again, the 2 rows here with the side borders and the top border. So what I'm going to do now, there's no backing. What I'm going to do now is just simply quilt it, and then I'll do the other half, and then I'll come back and show you how to join it. Alright, so I have quilted both of the quilt tops. As you can see, there it is, all quilted on the back, and the backing is still not on. So now it's time to trim away the excess batting on the quilt top. Is to take your long quilting ruler, line it up to the edge of the block or to the edge of the whole quilt top, and just simply trim it off. That's all you need to do at this stage. Once you've done that, then we are going to join them together, and then we're going to add on the backing, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So, but for now, just make sure and just trim off the excess. Now this is a good opportunity so that if your quilting has more or less expanded or out of shape the borders, okay, this is the opportunity to trim everything and make it nice and straight. All right, so just line it up and cut just as you would normally. What I want you to understand is that you are treating this stage as your quilt top, the same thing you would do once you have made your quilt top. You will then very obviously straighten it just to make sure it's nice and straight before you add on your borders. The same thing. The only difference is here we're kind of doing 2 jobs in one. Okay, so we come to the stage now. So you need to get both of your tops, okay, and I have one here, and you're going to put them front sides together. Now what I want to point out here is that if you have, let's say for example, I had this border on this side here. As you can see, there is the cornerstones with the white inner sashings here, okay. If I had on this side as well, the objective here would have been to simply line these up and to make sure that once you turn the quilt over, it's lined up properly and you can see the other side being transitioned and joined correctly, okay. But we haven't got this option here, so our marker points becomes our border. So what I want you to ensure is that when you put your borders front sides together, you're making sure that it lines up to the end where you first join it and where it meets. So I'm going to zoom in closer just so that you can get the hang of this. Alright, so you can see that both my borders are here. Now if you didn't add borders, then your marking points here would be the blocks for you to align straight together. So I'm just going to make sure they're front sides together and they're aligned properly. And if I fold it back, I can see I'm slightly off there, so I'm just going to move the quilt top over. just to make sure it's lined up and I can see it meets there. Good. So I'm just going to pin it, double check again. Yes, it's fine. And then all I'm going to do is pin. That's it. That is simply it. What I want you to understand here is even though we are doing this, it doesn't change anything about making the quilt top. It really doesn't, because had you made the quilt up in two separate halves, you would have done this anyway. Line it all up and make sure you stitch it together correctly. The only difference is here is adding the batting and quilting it so that you don't have the issue of having this big quilt underneath your quilt top, underneath your sewing machine. Now what I want you to draw your attention to here is that these two will not meet. And I'm telling you this just in case you decide to make this quilt. It will not meet, and you're wondering, well, why wouldn't it meet? It should be the same size. No, it's not. Because remember, this side does not have this inner sashing here. It doesn't have it. Okay, so you just need to bear that in mind. And then you will just continue to line things up and just move along with it. That is simple as it is. So line it up and pin. And I'm just lining up the edges here. What I don't want is a hangover. I just want to make sure that it meets. Do a 1/4 inch seam and stitch along there. That's it. Then we'll come back and we'll add the backing fabric as a whole, and then we will do some stitch lines just to hold it down. All right, so stitch is done. Long stitch along there. Now what I wanted to point out is that if you don't want to do a 1/4 inch seam and you want to do a slightly bigger one, you can. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. The most important thing here is to make sure that you capture both of the actual seams together so that nothing is not stitched together. All right, now what we're going to do now is just simply remove our pins, and we're going to give this a little press. We're going to give it a press so that it lays really nice and flat, and just to remove any bulk. At this stage, I would recommend definitely doing so. And if you want, you can lay it forward, or I should say front sides down. And if you want, you can go in between that seam and just open it up so that it lays really nice and flat. Why do people say nice and flat? I don't get that. It's a quilting thing, isn't it? We all tend to say nice and flat. Just flat. So I'm going to use my iron here, obviously, and just lay it open, and just like what you would do normally to remove bulk in any seam and quilting. What I wanted to understand yet again is that nothing really changes. The only difference is we kind of changing up the order in which we make the quilt. That's the only difference here. And as I said, the benefits here is that you are able to make this on, or to quilt, sorry, on your domestic sewing machine. And my iron here is on purple, which is very warm heat. Notice it's not getting flat, you're not hearing any steam. Okay, if you want to steam it down, again, nothing wrong with that. It just ensures it stays nice and flat for you. Okay, again, I just said nice and flat. I'm going to cut that out of my speech. Just not good enough. All right, so that is what I'm doing here now. Again, just opening as I go along. Once I've done that, then the objective here is to just simply add on your backing fabric. That's it. Let's turn this at the front side. And realistically, someone looking at this will not be able to tell that you made this quilt in the method that I just demonstrated. It just looks seamless, everything lines up. Hey presto, and your quilt is done. All right, so let's add the backing on now. So I have the backing onto the quilt. As you can see on the table here, it's folded. I have already done this side. Remember, I based in halves. So I've got this side to do. So all I'm going to do basically, as I've done before, I always glue base the batting, and I'm going to do that. You can see where the join is here, so I'm going to make sure that I put some along there because I want that to sit properly on the backing fabric. All right, I'm just going to spray as normal. Remember to make sure that your room is ventilated properly if you're using this. All right. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is just flip it over. Let me drag it up. And flip it over as normal. And I'm going to start on one half. Hold the quilt so it's nice and firm. Also, I'm going to make sure that the backing as well is nice and firm. It's not rolled or, wrinkled in the back there. And smoothen it off. Again, remember you always push those air pockets out because you want everything to be lovely and flat. Just going to move it towards me. Do the same thing, double check and smoothen it out. Just keep pushing those air pockets out as you go. And it's literally done. If you want, you can take an iron, as we did in the first, run it along there. It's not hot at all, as you just heard it went off. So, and just further adhere it onto the backing fabric. As you can see, it moves nicely. I moved it with one hand and I pinched it. So it's literally on there. So what you need to do now, lines, some stitch lines. So this is my middle area here where I joined. So I'm going to add 2 stitch lines on this side here. I can also add some stitch lines on this other inner row here as well. And on this one. If you want also, which I would do, is to then do a stitch line on the actual 9 patch. So you can do stitch in the ditch or you can do on either sides. So then basically what you're doing here is stitching the squares of the 9 patch down. So in essence, on the back of your quilt will have grid lines. So you'll have like a TikTok grid lines, if that makes sense. I think it's TikTok it's called. All right, so you'll have those grid lines and that's it. If you also want, you can simply do a stitch in the ditch around the border, okay? And then the next step is to add your binding. Again, the normality of making the quilt continues at this stage. So you will trim up your backing fabric to the end of your quilt and make your binding, stitch it on, and that's it. All right guys, so here is the finished product. So this quilt measures 52 inches squared and it's called Squared Stars. Okay, so literally it was done very relatively easy. It's a beautiful little summery quilt. You can see the pop of stars around the 9 patch and it was easily compiled. It is a quilt as you go, and let me know down below if you think this is something you can actually make. It is such a beautiful little quilt. The colors are really vibrant. It is scraps also. Just I thought I'll mention that yet again. Going closer so you can see the quilting. So on the stars, I did that. So it's just really simplistic quilting, to be honest. And then meandering all over. But on the stars, it was all just similar quilting. Overall, very good, easy method to use as a quilt if you go. The borders are really nice, also lovely colors. It works out well with the whole overall look of the quilt. Just shows really nicely. Love the colors though. The inner borders with the cornerstone, everything has worked out really nicely. I hope that this tutorial has taught you that you can make a quilt underneath your small sewing machine, and you don't necessarily have to do it the usual way. For those of you who are going to say to me, this is not a quilt as you go, what I want to bring to your attention is that everybody learns differently. Not everyone can pick up the idea of making a quilt as you go with individual squares. Some of us don't understand it. Some of us thinks it makes no sense to quilt it individually and then to quilt it again in a whole quilt. It just makes the whole process longer. You know, I came up with this idea so that I could use my sewing machine and make my quilts when we were traveling around Australia in our caravan. So, and it has helped a lot of people. I've received lots of emails to say thank you for the idea of making a quilt as you go in this way. So this is Quilt as you go in rows, which I think makes the process a lot more simplified. On the back, I just did wavy lines, and I used my quilting machine for this one. I didn't use the sewing machine, so I just put it down, use my free motion foot, and just go like that with it over the front of the quilt. So when you do yours, make sure you use the same color cotton thread on top so that it doesn't show up any different color. On the back, I use gray thread. So, and on the front, it's white. So guys, I hope this tutorial has helped you. If you feel that you would like to make the quilt, the pattern is in the description box for you to download. By all means, let me know what you think. It's a 9-patch with squares that's turned into stars. So it's called squared stars or something like that. I can't remember now. All right, so like and subscribe for more. Hit that notification bell. Let me know your feedback. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I'll show you the back again. So that's it. That is it. I mean, if you want to, you can always go in and do more lines, but I felt that was fine, to be honest. But yeah, beautiful size, finished very quickly, lovely. This is something you can make into a really big quilt, but colors alone are just beautiful. Beautiful summery colors. All right, guys, bye for now. Happy quilting. Love you lots, and I'll definitely see you in the next one. Bye for now.